At this point, we're ready to put the motor housing back on top of the motor. So you carefully lift the wires so they're not in the way. And it'll take a little bit of finessing, but it actually does fit down there pretty close and pretty good. Just make sure that all your pieces have got clearance, including your hoses. There are new gaskets, so it's going to have to be tightened down to seat it into the new gasket. So it won't fit the way it came out, because when it came out, it was already seated in the gaskets. We put the outside screw in partially, and then put the motor screws in. Because what's important is sealing the motor to the chassis. Now we're doing this with a manual screwdriver. I know there is a lot of temptation to use an electric screwdriver, but it's too easy to over-torque and strip out the plastic, so you're much better off using a mechanical screwdriver. Once you put the main 3 screws in that hold down the motor housing, you can just tighten them down until they're tight. Now in this particular area there's an O-ring. The O-ring has to be compressed in order for it to actually be sealed. You want to tighten them but not over tighten them, so get them down as far as you feel they can go, and then go a quarter turn more. And you have to connect the hose back up to the output receptacle.
There's the wire back down here.
Here's your tape. That tape's just to stop the wires from getting pinched when they put the rest of the assembly together. I would tighten these down another quarter turn if you can. No, I would just make it one more turn before we put it all together. Make sure that they're tight, because you can't get to them once you put the cover back on. Plus, they settle into the gasket a little bit, so if you let it sit, the gasket should take up some of the room, and then you can make a final tightening.
Now you put the housing back in.
Next thing is to put the front housing back on. You slide that in from underneath. Okay, the front housing is now connected, screwed in. Alright, so now what we're going to do is put the gasket on the main motor assembly. Again, it's black on black, so it's hard to show. But once it's in place, it now provides a seal. Keep tightening them down till you feel that they're nice and snug. And you could actually wait a minute or so and then try to go back and snug them up again, because they're going to fit into the gasket. It was right there. The black tape was right there. You have to put the solenoids and the pumps back in place. Make sure they're seated properly. And you have to put the pump housing covers back on. Really? Doesn't look right. Stop that. The motor on the right side, or the left side looking at it from the front, that actually runs the water to the front of the front of the vac, sits in a little seat here. It has to sit exactly right, otherwise the cover will not go back on properly. Let me get it. Yep. Okay, now that the assembly is back together, the pump housings are on top. This cover is on an angle, so don't try to get it really flat because it's never going to go flat. And now we have to put back the gasket that we couldn't get replaced. Yeah, right, I thought. Put the, you know what, do this over again.
Yeah, see if I can move this.
Okay, what we did is put the gasket back on. Now we're making sure the wires are out of the way. And then you're going to put the other assembly in place. Now the hose assemblies go back on. And then the slide arm goes back on. And once you get the slide arm on, you have to be sure you put that spring back on that came off it. And you'll notice that the spring, which is right here, is hooked to the chassis on the bottom and onto the little hook on the bottom of the slide. Put it in place and you make sure that you don't bend that little spring that holds up on front. This is right over here. And with that, we're pretty much reassembled. Now we have to put the covering back on. Slide the front on. It hooks in the front and then snaps down in the back.
Flip it over.
And flip it over. Now we put the screws in. That hold the top to the rest of the chassis. And we put the screws back on that hold the brush assembly. Actually, it's the water return assembly. Oh, okay. The brush housing assembly. Anyway, it's where the brushes go. Flip it over again. What about that? Now you have to put on the water vac return.
It snaps back in.
It just snaps, it hooks in the front, snaps in on top. A lot easier going on than it was getting off. And then, wait a second, then there's this little teeny height adjustment that has a knob attached. It just slips back in.
This is the selector for the type of floor.
It selects how high the pile is and whether you're picking up hard terrain or carpet.
This is the filter.
This is the filter, and that filter can go back in after you're all assembled. As a matter of fact, that filter can come out and be cleaned without this assembly. Turn it off. All right, we put the water return. Doesn't matter. It's going to be cut. We took the water return and put in the wastewater return is in. Then you just put the freshwater return in, and basically we're done with the assembly. Now all we have to do is plug it in and see if it actually works.